So Alassane Ouattara, the president of Ivory Coast, is now telling the public that he is changing the names of the streets that were having all the French names, replacing them into Ivorian and African names. Now, this is not the first time the president of Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, coming out and trying basically to deflect people's attention to escape what has been recently, because he has been exposed from all sides because of what Ivory Coast is consistently doing against Burkina Faso. That's betraying and being a traitor of Burkina Faso. Why I say this is the second time, because in January 2025, after the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, has exposed the government of Ivory Coast, Ivory Coast came out and said in January, or at the end of the month of January, they said, or the government said, that we are now kicking out the French army. The French army, we ask the French army to leave the country. And then, we haven't seen anything. The French military might have left, but still the US military is there. So they just kicked maybe French military only to have in its place the US army. Now again, this year, Ivory Coast is telling us now at this time, the timing is very interesting. It's changing its street names from French boulevards to African ones. I mean, this is too little, too late, or if you wish to say, it's the cart before the horse. Ivory Coast needs to do what it needs to do before coming and giving a lip service to its nation or to the African people globally, because we all know now what President Alassane Ouattara is capable of, that because Ivory Coast continues to be the safe haven of the coup plotters against Burkina Faso. Now people know what Ivory Coast is doing. This is just to deflect people's attention. So this is why we ask, how about Ivory Coast how about Ivory Coast go and tear apart or stop the agreement of the colonial pact that it has signed in 1960 when it got its independence with France? How about Ivory Coast stopping being a betrayer of Burkina Faso? How about Ivory Coast kicks out the US army now, which is threatening the revolution or the sovereignty of Burkina Faso? These are all the things what Ivory Coast need to prioritize before coming and telling us it's changing its straight names from the French ones to Ivorian or to African ones. The act by itself, it's a good start. But there are other things what Ivory Coast need to do before the real revolution. If you erase those names, French names, from your streets, what will change? Will something change in your economy? Will people get employed? What is the significance, the substantial change that it brings, except Ivory Coast getting a headline of this, in which, as it is planned, the French mainstream media like France 24 is running it as a headline. So I'm going to share this with you, what France 24 has published, and I'm going to read, some of it, how it's changing the names of those boulevards, because it's interesting. Here, look, the road linking the airport to Abidjan, that's the capital of Ivory Coast, the road linking the airport to Abidjan city center, for example, is no longer named after former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, but for the man who led Ivory Coast following its independence from France, that is in 1960, Félix Boigny. Now, these two names are really interesting. It's just from the real colonizer and then to change it to its accomplice, because we all know that Félix Boigny, the first president of Ivory Coast, was the one who actually plotted together with France the assassination of Thomas Sankara. And still Ivory Coast, but of course that was executed by the deputy president of Burkina Faso, who was the deputy of Thomas Sankara. And that man, he became a president of Burkina Faso. But after, when he changed his term, when he changed his presidency, he flew directly to Ivory Coast because he knows that is his safe haven. So Ivory Coast now changing this name from this French president name to its president does not mean anything. Now people know also what Félix Boigny has done to the revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara. The thing is that Ivory Coast, just to give you a bit of a background, Ivory Coast has about 32 million. That's its population. Relatively, if you compare it with other Western African countries, its economy was a bit better. It's much more market driven. But guess what? Even we say that it's better than maybe relatively from the other Western African countries. How so? It's most of the sectors are run by private sectors. From where those private sectors come? They are French. In fact, it's even not just French. It's not even a number of French companies. It's monopolized by a company known as the Two Bs. It's a name of, I have it here in my note, Bougie and Bolloré. That is, they're known as the Two Bs, that company, and they own most of the private sector, most of the economy, most of, the sectors in Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast produces 45% of cocoa beans for the whole world. The 45% of cocoa beans comes from Ivory Coast, and 40% of its export is from what it gets from cocoa. Now, this cocoa bean export, or this business, where your chocolate is produced, it comes from Ivory Coast, and it's owned by the French companies. Also, its energy sectors, its telecom sectors, its banks, everywhere, its fishing industry, everything that it owns, it is run by the French companies. Now, the French companies are there, of course, for a reason, because the colonial pact, this 14 Western Africans have signed when they got their so-called independence, enforces by law that before any other bidding, the French companies have the priority to step in the business of these Western African countries to loot their natural resources. If only the French government says, no, we don't want it, only then other companies from other countries can get into the bid if they make it. So this is what's happening. So what I am saying here is that why I said, if you say on the title, too little, too late, is that because you have to do first what you need to do. How about learning from your neighboring countries, from the Sahel states, cutting that colonial pact and little by little to free your economy so that it can benefit your people. 36 million people compared to other Western African countries or other populated countries in the continent, it's not too much. You can easily be, those nations whose GDP is high and which can benefit all classes of the society. But of course, you opt to get your security from the French government while the president and his administration loots the resources of the country and gets its security from French, from the French government, and as much as possible push the presidential term there. He's finished, I think, his third term. Alassane Ouattara came to power in 2011. Now it's 2025. 5 years is one term for the president in Ivory Coast. So it's about 15 years, and he's still pushing to get fourth term. So there are a number of things what Ivory Coast need to change. If I can, just cite a bit of what this colonial pact looks like, there are 11 components in it. Colonial debt for the benefit of France colonization. So there is this amount that they have to pay every year, including Ivory Coast, for French government. And then there is automatic confiscation of national reserves. Okay, that's where it comes from, looting their natural resource, because it's by law there. They have signed it. The other one is right of first refusal on any raw or natural resources discovered in the country. That's the third component of the colonial pact. Number 4, priority to French interests and companies in public procurement and public bidding. What I just told you with, in terms of French business companies being there, they are there because they are entitled because of this colonial pact. The 5th component is exclusive right to supply military equipment and train the country military officers. The militaries are trained by the French government, and sometimes when the government refuses to buy to the French government or to bow to in general to the Western power, then because they train your military, what they do is they train militaries to execute a coup d'etat against that specific president that refused to bow to the French government. The 6th component is right for France to pre-deploy troops and intervene militarily in the country to defend its interests, because there is a number of business that is there running there. As you know, the former president of France, what was his name? Jacques Chirac, said that without those Western countries, without their national reserves, because they are forced to keep their national reserve in French banks, okay? Without those Western African national reserve, France is a third world country. This is what their former president Jacques Chirac said. The 7th component of this colonial pact is obligation to make French the official language of the country and the language for education. Number 8, obligation to use France colonial money, CFA. Number 9, obligation to send France annual balance and reserve report. It's like they have a government and then to report. So the government of Ivory Coast or any other those Western African countries is not really government. Number 10, reconciliation to enter into military alliance with any other country unless authorized by France. Number 11, obligation to ally with France in situation of war or global crisis. So God forbid, if there's a third world war, then these Western African countries that have signed this colonial pact are forced to ally with France, whichever side France is allying, right or wrong. They cannot even be neutral. Okay, that's how much they are tied up. So this is what those Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali are fighting. And this is what Ivory Coast is trying or not trying, actually betraying and continue to be a traitor of this revolution instead of learning from this revolution and trying to free its economy. It comes and tells its public, oh, we're changing our boulevard. So what? You're bringing the cart before the horse. What you're doing is just too little too late. You're giving a lip service. We have seen again and again. We know that Ivory Coast is playing a double standard. You are doing this, and then on the other hand, while you say that you are kicking the French army, you are receiving the US army, only to deceive and threaten what's happening, the revolution in the Sahel states. So I will leave you with that, and to ask the question, so what? You change your boulevard French names, so what? There are a lot of things that you need to do. How about stopping being a betrayer and a traitor of Burkina Faso? Thank you very much again for tuning in. That was it for now with regards to Ivory Coast's announcement of changing its straight names from French names to Ivorian and African ones. So let us know in the comment section, what do you think of this? So just before I leave, Africlix, Marlene Dallas, Quinton, Marlene Von Florianzia. Okay, I will see if there is any question. There's no question, but thank you for rooting. Yeah, please share the video with others, because this is a different perspective. It brings a different perspective, so it's good for people to know. So share the video with others. If you want to support us, you can support us through our PayPal account. You can find it in the description section, and buy me a coffee link, that's also in the description section. It's a ciao for me for now. Bye bye.